Now we will have discussion regarding the amendment to the library media center policy. Hannah, do you want to highlight what we've done here?
I just want to answer the question that was brought up during public comment. When did the subcommittee meet about this? We met on 2 separate occasions. The November 23rd meeting, which was well attended by the community. We also met on the January 24th meeting, where this language was then recommended to the full committee for a vote. We then met on February 14th, where this full committee had a first read, and tonight is our second read and vote on this policy. But we have a resident expert librarian in our superintendent Essential, so I'm going to turn it over to her to kind of explain this policy.
Excellent. Thank you, Hannah. Superintendent?
Thanks for that, Hannah. Yes, I've spent a couple of decades as a library director and teacher of advanced media skills. So, anyway, this policy predates all of us, and it was missing one critical component that every library media center policy has. And every public school district does have a library media center policy. It was missing a procedure for handling formal complaints. And this particular process is an exemplar. It's used by many hundreds of districts throughout the country. And it protects the person it protects and supports the person who is asking the library, the school, to reconsider a material, a book, a website, an online subscription database, anything, any sort of learning modality or medium that is that patent environment in the school library. So it supports the complainant, and it also supports the community, those who would want to continue accessing that particular resource until there is a decision made. It's also a tiered approach to the complaint process. Obviously, the first person that the complainant should bring his, her, or their concerns to would be the school librarian. If that response from the school librarian is not satisfactory to the person with the request for reconsideration of this material, then it would go to the principal. After the principal weighs in, and if the complainant, if the stakeholder is still unhappy with the principal's disposition of his, her, or their complaint, then the person could go to the superintendent. And the superintendent would look at everything. Everyone through this process is looking at review media that is listed in the other parts of the policy, foreign books, school library journal, book list, the New York Times book review, etc., etc. Looking at circulation statistics, who's taking this out, etc., etc. And so if the person is not happy with the superintendent's disposition of the complaint, then the next tier will be the school committee. And so this tiered approach makes the whole process supportive of all parties. It certainly strikes down any sort of unilateral decision at the beginning that you certainly don't want that to happen. We want the decision to be community-based and sort of a hierarchy of consideration. And obviously, if the person is not happy with the school committee's disposition of his, her, or their complaint about the library resource, then that stakeholder would likely take it to the boards. And I've never seen that happen. I've seen things go as high as the school committee in my career. I've never seen them go beyond that. And I was a practicing librarian and library director for a couple of decades, and I only sort of go back to that level once in a large district. I saw go to the superintendent a few times in my career, but it's very rare. And so, like I said, this is a really sort of wraparound process. Everyone is supported throughout. The young readers, staff members who might want to access that resource, and also the person making the complaint. And that's why the material does remain on the shelves, because it has not been deemed inappropriate or unacceptable or etc. For that library collection. And so that's it. I mean, I think this is the second read. This is, like I said, boilerplate stuff. These are policies that are pretty much universal in public and school libraries. The process to file a complaint. And that's it. Any
Superintendent, so this policy, just to be clear, whether it's somebody that has a complaint about a book that is currently in the library or somebody that has a request to put something in the library, it would then go through this process, both to remove and or to add, no?
No.
Go ahead.
No. The process for asking the librarian to add to the collection is pretty informal, and it happens all the time. School librarians are constantly getting emails, hey, have you seen this book? I got this for Christmas to read to my little preschooler, and I went into font, and you don't have it in the database, or it could be a staff member. So there are many ways that materials make it onto the shelves of a school library. And many books and many other resources have been recommended by stakeholders or fellow librarians at a conference or at a workshop. Yeah, it happens all the time.
So this policy,
The librarian is the arbiter of what is in that collection, because if you put the library policy up again, you'll see sections before the complaint process, outline the collection development process, the selection process. So go up, let's see, keep on going, up, keep on going, keep on going. There is procedure for selection, and so no librarian takes this lightly. They know that materials are expensive. They generally want a lean and mean collection, and so this procedure is in place. And if a recommended item or a donated item, follows and syncs up with this process, if there are positive reviews in the various review media that the librarian regularly uses to select, some of them are listed right there, then that material lands on the shelves. But the librarian is the arbiter of what lands on the shelves. Every single item in a school library has been vetted deeply by the current librarian and all those before. It is not a loosey-goosey process. All school librarians have at least one graduate degree, most have two, an MLS and a content area graduate degree, and they are specialists in selecting materials, in collection building and reading, and constantly updating it, and weeding out anything that is in disrepair or that is archaic in nature. And nowadays, when it comes to anything in the tech section of a library, within a few years, that needs to be weeded. So the librarian is the operator of what, she's the expert, he's the expert, they're the expert, and we trust in their capabilities, their training, which is ongoing. And I've seen very few complaints about library materials in my career. Some have been invalid, but very few.
Discussion from the committee. Go ahead, Michael.
So this policy was originally adopted in 2014, according to this, and it has not been revised since. Is that correct?
Yes.
There you go.
Okay, so when I go into the first section, first of the lines with the areas that are highlighted, under the confidentiality, I have a problem with this about circulation of records are confidential.
Yes, they are, Mike. And
Well,
that doesn't mean the parents don't have access. It just means that no one else does in that building but the librarian. Even staff members cannot come into a library and ask, hey, what did my fifth grader, take out from the library? No. Confidentiality of records, we follow FERPA when it comes to educational records, and when it comes to library records, that is also the case. They are just as confidential as anything else in the student's record. Only the librarian knows what a child has out. If there is a volunteer in the library, that volunteer will have to sign a confidentiality agreement, just like all staff members do. And a student's circulation record is sort of breadcrumbs to that student's personal and intellectual pursuits. And that is sacrosanct when it comes to the library. So that is not referring to parents or guardians or caretakers of minors. That is referring to anyone else in the building. The child's teachers just get to know what the child's got.
it does not say that, though. So this is my concern, that it says circulation records are confidential. So if a parent wants to know what their student or their child is checking out of the library, they should be able to have access to that.
That is protected under FERPA.
So
Parental
how is-
access to
So how is that
educational
different than the materials that are in a classroom?
I'm not understanding.
Well, if a child uses a book inside a classroom, how is that different than a book that's inside the library? It's still materials that are being used in an educational environment.
Libraries are a different space altogether. A library circulation record, my library circulation record in a public library or university library is absolutely confidential. The police actually need a search warrant or a subpoena to access library records. Statute law protects the confidentiality of library records. In 48 states, I believe, in this great country of ours. And so it is very different.
So what are we protecting?
Very different.
What are we protecting?
We're protecting the right to privacy, the right to read, the right to intellectual pursuits. It's a fundamental right. It is the cornerstone of democracy that public libraries and school libraries allow equitable access to high-quality, highly vetted resources to all. And confidentiality and privacy is a part of that. No one's library record should ever be laid bare except to that person, or law enforcement with the right tools, or if it's a minor child and it's protected and deferred in schools, parents, guardians, or caretakers. So,
Lori, I do have a question based on a previous comment from Ms. Karen Boshan. If let's say a book is not returned, would the librarian then reach out to the family and just say, hey, there's a book, and not share what book is missing? Help me with that. So if something's overdue, I mean, how do we communicate that to whether it's the student or the family, or is that something we don't do? I'm just trying to learn here. I understand what you're saying, but that is a common thing. Hey, you got a kindergartner, it's been 5 library cycles or whatever, you haven't brought this book back. Is Ms. Corrigan just calling the household or sending a note home? How does this work?
I can't speak for Ms. Corrigan. I don't know what her process is. If it's email, if it's hard copy, I'm not sure. But I'm not aware of an instance where a parent at Wilbur McMahon School never made it to my desk that, titles weren't referenced. I will say that many librarians, and I was one of them, sometimes are reluctant to disclose to parents. Definitely when it comes to adolescents, sometimes adolescents are researching or, just reading for pleasure, books that they may not want the adults in their lives, to access the titles of. And so, but I'm not aware of anything that's occurred at Wilbur McMahon School, and I'm not comfortable speaking about that right now, because I'm afraid that the student's privacy could be breached. So confidentiality and privacy are absolutely mandatory in libraries. However, the attorney can also sort of chime in here. He and I have gone back and forth on many issues, including confidentiality laws in different states. We had a discussion last year. FERPA definitely does protect a parent's right and guardians and caretakers.
Lori, Sean, go right ahead.
So on the confidentiality piece, the superintendent is correct that under federal law as well as Rhode Island state law, if we as a public school department possess a document, say it's a record of a student checking out a book and it has the title of the book, that parent for that student has the right to request that record pertaining to that student. This confidentiality piece is to ensure that no other member of the public has access to that student record. Just like everyone here would, I would assume, would agree that you as a member of the public or you as a parent do not have access to any record of any other parent's student, child. That is what this confidentiality piece is getting at, including, a teacher cannot just simply come and ask, I want to know what Johnny is taking out of the library, okay? So ultimately, if the document exists, the student record exists, Johnny's taking out X, Y, and Z book, parent requests that, they have the right to see that within a certain period of time under state law and federal.
And state law does protect everyone's library records. State law.
And that is correct under the Access to Public Records Act. You as a member of the public going to the local library, even though that might be a public entity governed by the town and the state, no member of the public can request your circulation records. That is something that is private to you and, of course, the library.
There were 3 separate statutes that all sort of converge to absolutely protect everyone's right to privacy and confidentiality of their library patron records.
So basically what this is, if I understand this correctly, is that a parent can come in and request what their child is looking at. And so we need to specify that and here that, because this is basically a broad stroke saying that circulation records are confidential, end of story. So that I would like to have changed if we have to make a motion to do that, as far as the wordage. But this comes across as that parents are not entitled to what their parent and what their children are taking in or out of the library.
Sean, can you speak on that?
I certainly can. It is up to the discretion of this committee whether they want to clarify that language. The law is the law. You can't adopt a policy that will contravene the law. So even if you put in the words that parents cannot have access to these student records, superintendent and the librarian, you're telling us to violate the law. We can't do that. So your policy really doesn't count. Now, is there an argument to say maybe some clarification needs to be put in place so there isn't confusion? That's for you to decide.
I really don't see an issue with clarifying it so that everybody knows that there's a baseline so that everybody can go by.
What line item do you want, Michael, just so I can see how it would read?
Sure, so under confidentiality, first paragraph, last sentence, circulation of records are confidential.
Can we just add, Sean,
Something about.
and protected under
There it is.
FERPA? I mean, just add FERPA in there or something. I mean, it's the state and federal law that is protecting these parents, as you've
Yeah.
said, and I'm happy to provide clarification if it seems to be a sticking point, but as has been said, our policy is within, both state and federal law.
Correct, it doesn't supersede those things, so.
I'm not asking to supersede, I just wanted to clarify so that everybody understands that they're still entitled to the record, a parent is still entitled to their students' use of books in or out of the library.
I move to approve the amendment to the library media center policy with the additional amendment that clarification surrounding confidentiality be added. Is that okay?
I just need some clarification on that motion. I don't believe there's a motion on the floor for the approval of the entire document.
There is not yet.
Okay. So you all can discuss any and all changes and then incorporate that into a final motion, like you did to the bylaws. So if there's any other points of discussion that you need to have, I suggest you have those, and then any and all changes we can incorporate in the policy.
Yes, if I can continue, please. On number 8, it refers to a building level administrator. Who is that, please? Who are we referring to as a building level administrator in that particular case?
That would be the principal. However, we have some informal building administrators as well. Different tier altogether. We have head teachers. We also have a teacher certified as an administrator who does fill in for Principal McKinnon every now and then, but it would be Principal McKinnon, and if he couldn't serve, it would likely be one of the head teachers or our Ms. Devlin, who holds the cert as an administrator and does use it every now and then.
I would have to read that to reflect the principal and/or his designee at that point, so that there's no question about who's a building level administrator. The part on the end, it says a member of the community. I'd like to see more members of the community on this. I'm not, these are some of the comments that one member does not cut it for me on this. Number 14, a school administrator. Again, who are we referring to that in that case, please?
So you want the specific school administrator, you don't want it to be a school administrator?
I just want to know who we're referring to, so it doesn't leave any question.
Well, I mean, under that, guys, we would also need to know who the teacher is, because it just says teacher. You know what I'm saying? So, like, when they say school administrator, there's only so many people in this building that qualify as a school administrator, and we're under the assumption that one of those will be appointed. Much like when it indicates a teacher will be chosen, it will be one of the teachers within this building. It doesn't identify what teacher, just like it doesn't identify what administrator.
I guess we should have down who the possibilities are of those administrators.
If I may, Chair,
Please go ahead.
I believe the reason for the vagueness, one possible reason is that we don't want to have the same people on these committees time after time. I think it would serve the community best if we have, lots of participation and this committee is able to be convened of new people every time, because this isn't a standing committee. I also think keeping the vagueness of the language is helpful because, on the day of the meeting, maybe Jack isn't available, and we need a building administrator in order to move forward with the complaint. So I think that specifying some of this language could actually serve to hurt community members' complaints.
Correct. That's kind of where I'm coming from, Michael. I think that this outlines the people that we need to have at the table. And if we specify it, then if they're not at the table, this can get kicked. So let's say we make some specifications in here, and then whatever the case is, they're away, they're out, it supersedes the 10 days of Principal McKinney getting back to them, and then we can't move forward because we've identified specific members of this administration and building to participate, and they're not available, thus putting the person that filed the complaint in a position to say, are you really taking my complaint seriously? So I hear what you're saying, but I think making it vague opens it up to, like Hannah's saying, the diversity of the people that are on that committee, and then moreover, the ability to expedite the concern put forth by that community member that's made the inquiry to have an item removed from the library. So that's where my head's at.
It also leaves it to the interpretation that we don't know who's going to be in charge of that, or who the building administrator will be at that point, right? Because then we can pick whoever at that point, any of the building administrators, because it doesn't specify that at that point.
Correct, it would be any building administrator. I'm assuming there's more than one.
I would say that I don't go along with that. I don't agree with that. I just go to 19. The complainant may not participate in or observe the committee deliberations unless invited to do so by the committee. So,
Makes sense, it's like an executive session.
but we're here as a school committee, and we have to do all of our business in public with the exception of contracts or personnel. Right, so why, to me, this comes across as that this is a secret meeting because it refers to in number 20 that this will be a secret ballot vote. So what's so secret?
To protect the anonymity of the members of the council, to protect retribution against members of the council if the complainant's complaint doesn't go the way they'd like. Also, it's not, this isn't a public, wouldn't be an elected committee. Our meetings are in public because we are elected by the public. These people are not elected by the public, and they might not feel comfortable sharing their opinions on some of these books, or it might, the conversation might lead to discussing students in the building and the makeup of the student body that doesn't necessarily need to be public knowledge, that might infringe on student privacy. So to make these public meetings just kind of makes me uncomfortable, to be honest.
Sean?
So I'm going to just comment on the secret ballot vote. My recommendation there is to remove that piece, and here's why. Under APRA, Access to Public Records Act, those ballots would likely be subject to requests from the public. I don't see a provision under APRA that would allow you to maintain that confidentially.
I agree.
With that said, it's up to the discretion as to the committee as to whether or not these deliberations that this reconsideration committee is making is going to be held privately. I mean, there's a lot of non-elected committees that comprise the school department that are not subject to the Open Meetings Act. So even if it were subject to the Open Meetings Act, there would be certain reasons and exemptions for why you may have a private discussion. But with that said, it would be up to the discretion of the school.
I do have a question for you on that. When we're saying secret vote, is that somebody comes out of the room and says the vote was 3-2? Or does somebody come out of the room and says the vote was 3-2? These three people voted this way, those two people. How does that, what is the secret? I mean, I get.
Well, my assumption, and maybe the superintendent can speak to this as well, but my assumption from what a secret ballot would be is if there's 5 members on the committee, each member's yes, no, and cast a ballot, and it gets counted, and you don't know whose was whose. So, but ultimately, again, I think that would be subject to
Well,
our.
that's an interesting,
I agree, if I may, I agree. That is, the secret ballot is not a hill that I'm willing to die on with this policy at all. And it is true, we are not subject to the OMA, the Open Meetings Act, for most of our building and district committees. So I would say strike that piece. It does not have to be a secret ballot. But the hill that I am willing to die on is trying to qualify the confidential piece of student records. And I'm going on the record here. I feel that there should not be any qualifiers whatsoever. It is understood that federal law supersedes any school committee policies, and FERPA is one of them. But certainly, when I was 14 years old, I don't think I would have wanted my mother and father to gain access to my library records. I was a voracious reader, and I read from everything that I could get my hands on. And I can't imagine being a child, not a child, but a teen or preteen and adolescent, going through something very personal, accessing highly vetted, high-quality materials to support himself or herself during this passage. I can't imagine. They're also having to think about an explicit statement in their school committee's policy saying that parents have ready access to their circulation record. We know that's true because of FERPA. Putting it in that policy, I'm against it. Passionately against it.
Chair, if I may,
Go ahead, Sean.
just to the point about the committee's deliberation, as I said, it's up to the discretion of the school committee, but to give you just some advice, I mean, these committees are deliberating about things that are important to the public. Certainly, there is a privacy concern, as committee member has pointed out, about concern about retribution. Concerns about anger directed towards officials who are making decisions that may be controversial. And you have to balance that with the public integrity of that decision as well. So I think that's just to consider all that when making a decision.
So to follow your comments, that we go through that every meeting that we're here. We make controversial decisions, and people can hold it against us. And our decisions are in the public. They know what it is. As far as number 19, if that person has a complaint, they should be able to sit with that committee and explain what their concerns are. It's one thing to write it down, but to sit there and explain it to them. They should have that right to be able to do that. This is not, again, to me, is like doing things in the back corner. Let the complainant come in there, let them be heard. What's the problem with that?
well, I think they have been heard if we've gotten to the point. They've been heard by the librarian, they've been heard by the principal, they've been heard by the superintendent. It is now in front of this committee, it's not our committee, but the committee that meets. From that deliberation, it would then come to us. I mean, I think there's plenty of opportunity for somebody that has a concern to get one-on-one time with some of the people that will be in that room making the decision.
It's no different than an attorney presenting their case to a jury.
If I may, Travis.
I hear that. Go ahead, Karen.
Like Travis pointed out, if the person who is making the complaint is not happy with the answer given by that committee, it would then move up to this body, which is a public body, and it would be heard at a public meeting. And that would be the time where that person would then, of course, be able to kind of have that back and forth discussion during public comment, during the agenda item. So I think that that is where the ability to have that one-on-one is written into the policy. And like you stated multiple times, we are here, yes, in public. But again, that's because we are elected officials. We are volunteer ourselves to be here. We can't necessarily ask people on our staff to go outside of contract time to do meetings like this or as well. So we have to make sure that these can happen within the school day, and that necessarily doesn't precipitate a public meeting forum either.
So I would say to that, if it can't be handled between the principal and the librarian, let's just skip this middle section, go right to the school committee. This way, everything's in public, they get to make their case, it comes in front of us, we get to have external help if we need it, and it's done with, everything is right there. Let's simplify this, let's go look at Barrington's. Barrington's is a lot simpler than what this is. The other part is that there's also one from CCON where it allows parents to be able to opt out of books. That's not in here, which we haven't talked about that. The other thing is that there's an online database of all the books in our library. That should be included in here so parents know that that's available. I mean, I cannot believe that this policy has not been updated since 2014, and it has nothing to do with you guys because you weren't here. Nobody was here. But the thing is, that this thing hasn't been touched in 10 years.
That's why we're looking at it now.
Well,
And
this
excuse
is-
me. If you read number 18, the complainant may make an initial verbal presentation about the resource under reconsideration or may choose to share the written form. The complainant is asked to provide sources for quotes used during this presentation. So I believe your concern, Mike, about the complainant being heard by that committee is alleviated right there in the previous bullet point.
I mean, this is a very detailed.
It's too much.
I actually think it protects the school in the best way possible. Somebody has a complaint, they go directly to the librarian says, this is fine with me, I still have the complaint, I then move to Principal McKinnon. Principal McKinnon says, I'm not seeing anything, I've spoken with Mrs. Corrigan, this is fine with me, then we go into the superintendent, then the superintendent decides to make, I mean, it's going to be well documented, the concern, the complaint, and the reason as to why the book should be removed. So I think there's going to be ample time, and this is all before, if they all rule saying the book has to go, that's all before it comes before this body in a public forum for not only that person to make their argument, but then that person and their support to come out and make a public comment. So I think that they're well protected. Moreover, Michael, I think that this gives the ability for the complainant to have this process move along in an expedited fashion. Like we talked about, the vagueness, not naming people, this has to go up the ladder. It should happen pretty quickly. And, you know, I think the verbiage in place allows those that have concerns about the library to pursue those books that they have concerns about and take it to the resources, the librarian, principal, superintendent, to voice those concerns. And if it goes beyond that, they are certainly welcome to come to this committee following their rejection of request. I mean, it doesn't end with Principal McKinnon or Lori saying, no, I agree with you. Ms. Corrigan, the book's not coming out. You can keep pressing on. It goes before that committee. No, we're going to keep the book. Now it's in front of us. Now it's out for the public. And I can tell you, it'll be well documented prior to that meeting in this room. And I mean, are you saying that it won't be? Are you feeling uncomfortable that this person is not out in the room? Sure, we're not closeting them. We're bringing them out to say, hey, you got concerns? We want to hear them. This is the rate at which it goes. These are the people in which you check with, and away we go.
So if we look at, it says procedures for handling phone complaints. There's 26 items, not including the sub-items of each section. I think, I would really like to see this go back to the policy subcommittee and include the database into the language, clarification on the circulation.
When you say database into the language, as a parent of this school, I think that you should know that there's resources available to you without having to put it into a policy, or B, to also say that this policy is going to highlight the benefits of having the public library and all the resources it
No, it's
provides.
just very simple, that any materials are available through whatever the database is that's online.
It says that
Where does it say that?
through it says the individual school library media center may establish their own circulation policies with respect to the size of their individual collections and school needs. And it lists all the different kinds of ways that we can circulate material
I'm talking about the
and have
database,
collections.
the database that's online, that you can actually go and view the materials online. So if there's any questions from parents, they can actually go onto any library and actually be able to view the materials. Let's spell it out. Let's put in there what that database is.
I respect that you want parents to have that information, but I don't believe that this is the appropriate place. This is outlining, like the rules of the library. Then the library can establish their procedure for getting onto the database. We have the Parent Square app that could, I'm sure Ms. Corrigan could disseminate information showing parents how to use and navigate the database. Students as well, I'm sure, get taught how to use the database when they're in the library media center. So while I agree with you that that is an important resource and piece of information for parents and community members to have, I just don't think that this is the appropriate spot.
And I gotta say, I agree with Hannah. I feel like, just like you noted, Michael, that we haven't reviewed this policy since 2014. I'm apprehensive to put information that parents would want in a policy that's going to be, I mean, they're gonna have to search this out. We could literally put this on the website tomorrow.
What's wrong? That's right. If you want to.
We could put the data right on it, we could put it right on it, just like we put the survey up, or we can share things on our website.
But my point is, what is the problem with actually just telling parents to go to?
Because this isn't the venue to do that.
Yes.
Superintendent wants to speak.
Go ahead, Lori.
Yeah, thank you. Mike, that's a valid point, but I'm reasonably certain that there is ready access to the library's catalog. I've had many stakeholders tell me that they've looked at books in the library catalog. So that is not information that is withheld. That is public information. I'm sure it's also in many of Ms. Corrigan's Parent Square messaging, weekly messages that she sends out. I'm sure it's navigable through our website as well. Jonathan, I don't know if you could, sort of capture that for me. So yeah, kids access it all the time. I know parents access it. I know grandparents access it. Stakeholders access it. So the information is out there. And is it out there enough? Maybe not. Maybe that's what Mike is speaking to. And so Jack will certainly talk to his staff tomorrow, or we could put it more prominently displayed on the website, LCSD. That's an easy fix.
I guess
Hold on, Hannah had a question.
I'm good.
Go ahead, Matt.
I just don't understand what the harm is if we put it there, and if everybody's.
Because it doesn't apply to the policy.
And this isn't a regularly accessed document by the parent body.
It's a policy that the school committee puts out on how things are to be run. So we're letting the public know this is how you can access something through our thing. In regards to Parent Square, you guys throw out the stuff through Parent Square all year long, and that messaging, what you did in September doesn't mean that you remember that in March or April, because you've been bombarded with stuff all year long. Especially for the parents that have multiple kids, they are getting it from either 2 or 3 different avenues. So I don't understand what the big issue is. I'm just trying to say, let's put them, what's wrong with putting the information out there for people?
Put it in Michael, you literally argued at the beginning of this, how have we not looked at this policy since 2014? Do you think the parents are looking at this policy? I think they're actively going, I gotta go to the library, that's where the database is gonna be. They're probably gonna go to the website and say, oh my gosh, the library database is right there under the library. That's a little bit more accessible for the parent. I mean, putting it in here, it's just gonna get lost. It's like, speaking to the echo chamber.
Especially since you were concerned about the very long list that we have for procedures, I just don't understand why you would want to add more information to this policy. And again, And Parent Square, I believe teachers are able to set up their own pages. Parent Square also works like a social media page. So if you were sent an email in September on that social media post by Mrs. Corrigan, it is still there. You can still access it. Mrs. Corrigan also, I assume, has her own library media center page established on Parent Square where you can readily access all of that information. So while I hear your concern, Mike, I think it is being remedied actively. I believe we had a member of the public who said they searched the database. Was that true, or were you just Googling?
I didn't find it on the website, actually. I would love to see it prominently.
Right, and we would love to put it on the website as well, but this is not the place to put that information.
Yeah, can I make a motion?
Please.
Pass this.
Well, we do want to amend some verbiage, I believe.
All right, well, yeah.
Sean, how did that look?
All right, hold on a minute. All right, I need to have some direction from the committee as
I
what they
struck
are.
the original motion.
Your original, okay.
Striking her
Yeah.
original motion.
Okay. So, I'm just gonna go from top to bottom here, and then we get to the second to last page. The confidentiality piece, there was a discussion about having some language that clarifies that all the circulation records are confidential and subject to FERPA. So where are we going with that? Would you like to see that included in a motion to approve?
Yes, I don't think it hurts for the parents to know that they are protected by the law.
I would like the language to say what you said though, Sean, about how parents, that while circulation records are confidential, they are protected under FERPA. I do not want language to say parents have the ready access to circulation
Why
materials. That would be
circulation?
redundant.
Why not?
That would be redundant under federal and state law. We're not hiding anything. It's federal and state law. It's FERPA.
People don't know what FERPA is.
If you have a student in this school, you should know what FERPA is.
Parents know.
You sign a FERPA form every single year.
I didn't know what it was,
Sure.
so let's be listed.
Can you
Go
call
ahead,
it
Sean.
order?
Order, please. No public comments. Go ahead, Sean.
Whoever's going to be making the motion, I need to know, we can do this one of two ways. We can do this on the fly, or we can come back. So I can put some language together, and we can come back in a month and do that. I think you want to get it approved tonight, is what I'm hearing from the committee, for the
Correct.
changes. So I need some, but I do need some clear direction as to this language. So whoever's going to be making the motion, the changes are going to be, while circulation records are confidential, they are subject to FERPA. Is that how you want it to read?
If you suggest that that makes sense.
I mean, that's
Do
a
you-
simple, that's
Can I
simple
ask
law.
can I ask your opinion just based on what this, do you believe, based on what we have written so far, that state law and federal regulations under FERPA are protected based on what we have written right here?
Well, yes, by definition, a policy cannot supersede state and federal law. So you could say circulation records are confidential all day long. My thought was that there was a request for some clarity. So,
Okay, I agree with that statement, so if the member who would like clarity would like to make a motion, then
I make a motion on that, but I think we should also include the other portions of this about striking the secret ballot vote.
Good with that?
I don't agree with 19 and do away with that.
Well, 18 justifies 19.
I'd like to see a portion in there as far as parents, if parents don't want children to be viewing certain books, that should be included in
No, that's a family discussion at home. I don't think we're going to put in an opt-out clause tonight on the library.
we can opt out on surveys, right?
Sean, do you want to go into why these are two totally different balls of wax?
federal law governs surveys, it does not govern
Thank you.
discussion.
What's the second one?
It does not govern this discussion. What was your question?
of the library?
No. If a parent wants to have a child opt out of reading certain books by certain authors or whatever it may be, that they have that option. The town of Seacon has that. I brought that.
Okay, so that's certainly a legitimate policy discussion to have.
And I
But I just wanted, there was a distinction here made about surveys, and there's a certain requirements under federal law about opt-out options for surveys. That one does not apply to opting out of particular books.
And Mike, to your statement, I think in the best interest of the community and the school, I think we need to come to an agreement and a compromise about how we're going to pass this version. And then if you would like to email me your suggestions, I would love to bring this back to the subcommittee once this version is approved. Because I think it is important that we have a process for handling formal complaints, because before this, we did. And we need to have that.
I agree.
So if it's not perfect right now, I think we need to make our little adjustments right now, and then you can send me your further comments, and we can work on that and boot it back up to full committee in a couple
Absolutely
months.
consider
Yeah.
So why don't we, I think this has been 10 years since this has been huge. So excuse me, if it's one more month, and I will email you what my ideas are, so you guys can, at your policy committee, can sit down and incorporate everything that we're putting together here tonight, all of our comments, and then bring it back to us next month. Why can't we do that?
Because I think that there may be community members who would like to inquire about changes to the library.
Is there a problem right now, though? Is there something going on right now?
Not that I'm aware of, but if a member came to the library and said, I have a complaint, there's no way for us to help
Facilitate,
them.
yeah.
And then they would be coming to us to complain that we have no way to hear their complaint. And then we would look like the bad guys.
And I think this is the best of both worlds. We're not saying we're not hearing you, and we agree this is a big one, and it hasn't been reviewed in so long, but we need something on the books now, and send us your comments, and we will take it back and consider it.
I think you know that Megan and I as a subcommittee, and Polly and myself before that, in your 3.5 years that you've served with me on this committee, Mike, we are very active on the policy subcommittee, and I will not let this go by if there are legitimate concerns from the committee to add, subtract, take away further language. But I do think it's important that after the months of work, we've been working on this since November, that we get something published and passed to the community. So I agree with you. Let's strike the secret ballot. I disagree with you about 19, and I think some of us disagree about the confidentiality. We need to make some compromises here so that we can get this passed for the community, so that members can make complaints as needed, if needed.
Okay, so here's going to be, with all that said, here's going to be my recommendation. To approve the policy with the following edits. 1, paragraph 20, strike the words, this will be a secret ballot vote. If it's out of order, I apologize. Going to confidentiality paragraph. Add a new sentence at the end of the first paragraph. Parents have rights under FERPA to access their child's circulation record. Sentence.
You're saying 20%?
This is the deletion there.
Yeah.
And then on the confidentiality paragraph.
Okay, I thought you were saying 20 would be a line.
No. So again, I'll just read that out. Parents have rights under FERPA to access their child's circulation record, period.
Any other amendments?
I'm sorry, those are the only two that I would recommend based on the discussions that the committee's had and what I am leaning in the direction that we're going.
So one question I have is that, what is our policy as far as how long are these policies supposed to go before they're reviewed?
That is a good question that I unfortunately do not have the answer for you. I don't know if we have a generic policy review procedure in place, but generally the as issues arise, and as we move through our policy subcommittee, things are reviewed as laws changes. Things are reviewed to make sure that we're complying with the law. So that is generally how these policies are handled. Please, Superintendent, correct me if I'm wrong. Or add.
Right. We were on a consistent schedule for a long time because we did the transition from Google Docs to Parent Square. So we started revising in, really earnestly in 2019. And then when the Title 16 changed, we had to list all of those policies that needed to be revised to comply with the new statute around public education. And so we've done, I would say we're definitely 3 figures, at least looking or revising or, creating. We also wrote a lot. You did too, Sean. So I think now is the time for the policy subcommittee, now that we've done the bulk of the work in earnest, to look at some of the policies that have sort of been lying there dormant for a bit. And so there really is no schedule line. It's as statute law changes, as RIDE regs change, obviously the conversion process from Google Docs to a huge keyword searchable database, that we really put pedal to the metal for all of that. So yeah, there's always something to be looked at and revised in that canon, that's for sure.
So I would say the one thing that you asked if there was anything else, is that in that part of that motion that we had, that there's access through the website for the online catalog of the library. To make it sound better, but that's the bottom line is that if they're going to buck me on this as far as having it in the policy, then let's have it put on
All right.
on the website.
So that's a request. You can absolutely make that request for item 9.6, 100%.
Right, we don't want to go too far afield from
Yeah, no, that's
the agenda item, but you can certainly request of the administration on that.
100%.
Oh.
So for example, for that item, you say, I would like to see this readily
Yeah,
available
sure.
on the website to all parents. That being said, Sean has wordsmithed this a little bit. Do I have a motion?
I move to vote on the Library Media Center policy as amended.
Do I have a second?
So,
We will vote via roll call.
Trafficati,
Aye.
Hannah Ann,
Aye.
Betty Gonzalez,
Aye.
Susan Kinney, Ben Rocha.
all right.
Excellent. Thank you all for your contribution
It's good.
and it's great to compromise. Very well said.